All right, everybody, give everybody a few minutes here to get logged in. If there are any, it's 2 o'clock on a Saturday. I completely understand if y'all are out with your families. I'm getting ready to do the same thing. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the family, stuff going on with my dog. I had to go to the ER 2 days in a row for my little dog. But we'll give you all a few minutes here to get settled in. It's 2:02 here on Saturday, the 24th of August. Just a little quick trip down some of the things that are happening now and down memory lane through World War II and some other things, some stimulating conversation, I hope, or some stimulating information that'll get all of you thinking in maybe a different way. Because what we're watching play out, hey Christy, what we're watching play out right now is not a new scenario. This is not something that is ironic or strange or unique. Let me see if I can try to get Rumble going again here. Come on, Rumble. Let's work, software. Not unique. Now, what we're going through right now has been done. It was done 80 years ago in the last turning. We are going through a fourth turning right now, an 80-year cycle. And these things happen all the time. We happen to be in the crisis phase right now, which is never the fun phase, but it certainly ends well. That's the good thing. And I think this time it ends well. And you hear that all the time. It's different this time. It's different this time. This time is different. I still can't get Rumble to do this here. There we go. We are live on Rumble and live on YouTube. So if you don't like YouTube, which most free people do not, feel free to go over to Rumble. It's certainly available for you right now. So thank you all for coming here on Saturday, 2 o'clock on the 24th of August. Just a real quick YouTube live, Rumble live, just to touch base with y'all. I wanted to do this yesterday. I wanted to, this is all kind of freestyle today. I wanted to do this yesterday, but yesterday was slam-packed with my little dog, Gracie, going to the ER and having a couple ulcers on her eyes that are healing right now. And that was a day after she had a vaccine side effect, because you have to get dogs vaccinated. They will vaccinate our couches next before we know it. But yeah, rough week in our house this week with the pets. Mother-in-law moved in, got a lot of family downstairs, getting ready to have all of us going to my daughter's football game to watch her cheerlead, and then head to dinner this evening. So wanted to get this in with y'all on a Saturday. It's all recorded, so if you're missing this live, you'll still hear it later if you want to. I don't know how many people actually listen to these things, because the number count changes every 4.5, 5 hours. We check, and we all of a sudden have 80 to 100 less views on YouTube anyway than we did an hour or two beforehand. So the censorship industrial complex is in full effect. There are so many instances of this happening right now. E-commerce companies are expressing that their traffic was cut in half on August 15th Google update. Google is also a Zionist communist organization. I know that there's this tremendous divide between people that, Zionism is not good. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian Zionist or a Jewish Zionist or a Muslim Zionist, because if you are a Zionist, you are none of those three religions. You actually believe in a totally different God. And it's not a good thing. So, but they are definitely trying to censor everything, including e-commerce companies who sell t-shirts like free Trump t-shirts and things like that. That is happening before. I remember in 2021 on Telegram, I was telling everybody to watch out for financial censorship. And we have seen that happen time and time again throughout this country, throughout Canada, throughout pretty much every nation in the world. But nowhere are we seeing this more apparent right now than in the UK. Britons right now are being arrested for free speech. They're being arrested for things like I talked about on my last live. They're being talked about for using terms like it's okay to be white. And next week, we're going to go through where this hatred of people of lighter skin has come from. There should be no hatred. Let me be this clear. There should be no hatred for someone based on the way they look, the way that they were born, the place that they were born in, where they're from. None of these things matter. It's all about the spirit, not about the flesh. This is very biblical. Now, there are instances where God commands us to hate evil, and evil should be hated. So it shouldn't be the color of your skin that has no bearing on what your soul and what your spirit have to say to the world. But of course, it's what they use. It's the greatest dividing tactic that's ever been used against human history, and it all began in the early 1900s. And we're going to go through some very, very... Hi, Jenny. Hi, Libby. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Gail. How are you all, folks? Thank you for commenting. I'm getting used to doing these lives here. I used to do them just on audio. It was much easier. I could just be on my phone and looking at comments when it was available. Generally, I try to focus on what I'm saying out of respect for you and your time. But thank you for the comments. So anything you want to talk about, I can see the comments on the software now. So anything you want to talk about, please just pop it up on the screen. This is really a freestyle. I'm going to go through a little bit about RFK, the impacts of RFK. I'm going to go through some of the surveillance state tactics that are happening and what's happening around the world. I'm going to start with that. I think in the middle of these victories that we experience, and in some cases, they're not really victories. They're just kind of sidesteps. But I've been talking about this forever. What you're watching right now is a global punch-counter-punch war that's happening through information, through ideology, through society, through finance, through every possible avenue. This is fifth-generation war. This is a war. I know that there are plenty of people who think we've already lost, we can't win. There are plenty of people who say we've already won, there's no way we can lose. I kind of fall right in the middle, and I'm fine with that. I'm not trying to be the guy who is most QE and got everything right, and all these things, because most of them are going to be wrong, and that's okay. We're all trying to do our best. There should be a board or a governing body or a bunch of people that actually vet information, but unfortunately in this world that does not exist. So we have to do that on our own for a few years. And I think in the end, we're going to have some immutable blockchain technology that's going to come out and it's going to record history as is and not told by the winner, with hundreds of millions of dollars going into propaganda for decades and decades to brainwash people into thinking certain events turned out one way when they actually turned out another. And we're going to go through that in the end. So the surveillance state stuff that we're dealing with right now is extending into society. So it's not just big tech. I mean, this is one thing I want to cover right now. I live in a very nice neighborhood here in Texas, and we have some amazing people here. We also have some lunatics here. We actually have a family in this neighborhood that sues people for a living. It's what they do. They sue everyone. If the lawsuit sticks, they win. They put a new backyard together and a new pool and stuff, and then when they lose, they don't tell anyone about it. I'm not going to get into their beef. I don't know them. I don't care. I just hear about them from every neighbor. There are lunatics in our nation. And more importantly, there's a lot of rats in our nation. And these rats are primarily on the left. They've been trained, just like in COVID, they've been trained to tell on other people. And I've seen this play out in my own friends' lives. It hasn't played out in my life. Actually, take that back. It did play out in my life once, but I didn't do what I was accused of. It was very obvious to see. And, we're watching censorship. Not only we're watching people want censorship on other people. When someone disagrees, and this video today will probably get censored by the time it's done with, and it's all freestyle. So don't expect it to be like a documentary that somebody spent 4,000 hours on. What I want to do today is stimulate your mind to get you to think about his history in a different manner, because history is what predicts the future. And as Orwell said, those who control the past control the present, and those who control the present control the future. Orwell was also very good at describing today's world, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Let me pull that up so I can read it to you. And it's not actually from Orwell. It's from, I think, Gemini is who the AI for Google uses, which actually was accurate on this search. But the censorship industrial complex is not something that is just regulated to technology companies or government boards or politicians. It's people in your own neighborhood. It's very much the time in history where we start standing up to those around us who tell us, I have a liberal in my house right now who literally, when we talk politics, I don't want to hear this anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. They don't want to hear the truth. They have this deep embedded feeling in their heart that what they, and I think it's virtuous. I think it's virtuous. I think these people believe the crap that they've been told. I think that they truly believe that abortion isn't killing babies and allowing hedonistic sex so you can slaughter the babies as a sacrifice to Moloch, which is what abortion really is. I think what they've really bought in hook, line, and sinker into the fact that it's really, truly about reproductive rights and women's health care. There is nothing reproductive about abortion or vasectomies, which is now a main staple for the left. It's now part of the Democratic National Convention, where you can go and get your tubes tied. You can go and get everything cut up. You can extract a baby. It's all good. Then you can go in and make hedonistic videos about all the dirty things you do after the conference or maybe during the conference. One thing I will say about this is the right actually did this totally correct this year. There were so many trolls, and Matt Walsh and Mike Lindell, whether you like him or not, went undercover. Oh, James O'Keefe went undercover. And for me, these were some of the funniest moments of the week. It's great to get some humor in the middle of this crap storm that we find ourselves in. And make no mistake, in my opinion, the storm is upon us. The storm is probably much different than we thought it would be. I don't know that we'll be hiding behind bunkers and fighting the UN, some of those things that all of us have thought and prepared for. I think what it's going to be is more of a battle of the mind and of the dollar, and I think that's a really big thing. But the censorship industrial complex is rampant in this nation right now. YouTube is ramping up. They're doing it here. I think they banned Badland Medias. Don't know any of those guys over there, but I really like some of their content. I think they're very intelligent guys. I think guys like Burning Bright and Just Human are extremely intelligent. They have a good approach to what we're doing, and they keep a level head. They're not trying to rile up emotions or make really unprecedented large predictions. They're taking what's in front of them and doing that. They got to 5,000 on YouTube, and they were banned immediately. So we're not there yet, but I'm assuming we'll probably be there as well. And later this month and early next month, we're going to be doing at least 2 live interviews per week. Some of these people you'll know. You'll know their name very well. Some of these people you will have never heard of, but they're very interesting and they have very cool perspectives on the world. Not that I agree with them in many cases, but their perspectives are unique. And I think that we all need to stop getting so wrapped up in an echo chamber, hoping that what we thought 3 years ago will come true today, and start experimenting and looking into other people's predictions and perspectives, because somewhere along the line, these are all going to mesh and meld. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing for everyone. So we'll have some good perspectives on here. Hi, Emily. Hey, Carla. How are you? The censorship stuff is all over the place. Our CIA has their hands in everything. Almost every major technology platform was created by an intelligence agency, given to an entrepreneur, and then all of a sudden their fame and fortune became part of an urban legend behind how great they are, Zuckerberg and some of these guys. I will say this over and over again. I've said this for 3 years. I was bashed and hated for it 3 years ago, but guys like Jack Dorsey, I wouldn't take your eyes off of them. I actually don't think they are as evil as you think they are. I think there's a lot of people who, in order to get wealth, have to do certain things, and when they get there, they play both sides of the fence. I think Elon Musk is one of them as well. I'm not saying if they're good or bad. I'm just saying watch what they do. I think that both of them are working on a lot of decentralized products. The problem in the world is that we are centralized. If you read any... one thing that's always caught me off guard here. Hey, Brian. Hey, Eve. One thing that's always caught me off guard in this entire process of, living a normal life. I was a normie like everyone else. I'm not afraid to admit it. I haven't been wide awake my whole life. I've been kind of awake most of my life. Like, I've always noticed, like, why is every couple in a commercial interracial, and that doesn't look like the world I live in? Or why are they always telling us that, why did they not say the word Jesus even when I didn't believe? I still couldn't comprehend why that wasn't allowed. Hey, Chris. But it's always been interesting to watch this unfold. So when this all began in 2020, I had my own public company and I gave away all my shares, and I just moved to Texas. I just wanted to be free. And when I got here, I started following a lot of people. A lot of these people ended up being good-hearted people that just don't really have the know-how or the experience or whatever, but they're doing their best, and I love that. And some of these people were just crackpots, and I followed them too, just like everyone else. And you learn who's who pretty quick. But mostly what I found was that people were looking for the good side of everything, which is amazing. That's a good perspective to have in normal times. What I've done for the last 4 years of my life is I've studied the enemy intimately. I try to read all of their doctrine. I've read everything from the Quran to the Zohar to the Talmud. I read their doctrine. I've read, First Temple of Satan documents, occult documents. I wanted to understand everything. It's actually how I found Christ in my life, was by studying the darkness, because I couldn't understand why people would have, yeah, that is my shirt, Corey. I couldn't understand why there was all this pedophilia in the world. And I started to realize as I read occult doctrine, and one of the books is up here, I think, called Hope of the Wicked, right behind that silver 50 cal that my friend Tom gave me. So Tom, if you're watching this, I know you always say keep the bullet on your shelf, and it's there, buddy. But there's a great book called Hope of the Wicked. One of the sections in there, written by Pastor Ted Flynn, is a section about the occult and why. It's where I put 2 and 2 together. You start reading about all this child trafficking, which is the largest plague in the history of the world, and it's the one thing that no one talks about on a grand scale except for Donald Trump, and that's why people hate him. Really put that together in your mind. But when I started looking into this, you start to realize that the occult, their purpose is to serve the devil. And as I was going through the Bible, and I love reading the Bible, I read it every day on prayer, I read it every night before I go to bed, little sections. But for me, I had to put this together. I could not understand. Are people sexually attracted to children? Like, how does this happen? And by the way, this video is probably going to get banned for even saying this. But I started to find out, especially in Hope of the Wicked, before I got into some of the occult manuals, and I've had a chance to dig through what could be or could not be a Mason's manual. I've read all the darkness. That's part of my journey. But what I found out is that the purpose of punishing or hurting or abusing little children is because little children have tremendous innocence and intelligence. They're beautiful. I have 2 kids. I have a niece and a nephew that I'm going to see in about an hour here that I just love and adore. They're 5 and 2. That great age where you realize that they're just their minds, their hearts are just wide open, and they're just looking for guidance, and they just want to experience cool things in life and live in love. And that actually is what the darkness is after. So the reason for this pedophilia movement it's not new, by the way. This has been going on since the times of Canaan. And the purpose is when you do bad things to children. I hate using the term because I don't even like talking about the subject, but we all need to. There are many subjects we need to talk about that people just don't. The reason they do this is because it steals the innocence of a child. And if you go back to the Bible, Jesus told us only those with the innocence of a child shall enter the gates of heaven. It allows you to see that beyond the earthly perversion, things go much deeper than you think they do. This has nothing to do, in my opinion, has nothing to do with grown adults being attracted to children. What I think it is that they serve the devil and they want to steal the innocence from the child to keep another soul out of heaven, which doesn't work because God forgives them. But at the same time, that's the purpose. That's what they do. They steal the innocence, and the darkness gives them power, gives them money, gives them fame. I'm getting sidetracked here, but I think it's a great topic to go through. Because we're living in this world that we don't really have a say or an option anymore. We're being censored, we're being silenced, and you have to really look at who is doing this. They pretend to be all types of things. They pretend to be Christians. They pretend to be Jews. They pretend to be Muslims. They're not. We live in a Luciferian world, and that Luciferian world hates families. They hate children. They hate us. They hate free-loving people. And at the end of the day, they're on the ropes. This punch-counterpunch environment, they are getting the snot kicked out of them right now. And that brings to mind the first area I want to go before I get into RFK. Actually, I'll get into RFK first. So my last live, I talked about the fact that I met their campaign folks and said, quite frankly, that he'd make a great vice president. It would bring both parties together. You would have these, 2 iconic names coming together, and that's good for politics. But what does it do for policy? I don't care what it does for politics. The reality of the world is, regardless of what polls tell you, this has been predicted by me for 2 years. By the time the 2024 election is actually here, you are going to see that about 80% of America is going to vote for Trump because they're tired of being broke. They're tired of crime. They're tired of the border. They're tired of everything that's happening right now. And you are going to watch 80% vote. I do think that they are going to try to use the voting machines and all these things and rig it again. And I think at that point in time, we will see everything stop the way it should have in 2020. But in 2020, things weren't as bad. We just came out of the Trump 4-year campaign where people had more money and freedom than they had in many, many decades. So many people were like, well, it's, I still remember talking to people. I'm like, guys, we got to do something about this. Well, what can we do? I didn't know. I didn't have the answers right then. And if y'all remember, if you've been with me long enough, in 2022, I said this stuff stops when 3 things happen. 3 things. We are slaves that exist on a tax farm. That is the reality of planet Earth, because even Karl Marx wrote that the pinnacle of communism is a central bank. If you can centralize the finance, control the finance, then you can centralize and control an entire society. There are many other pinnacles of communism, and about 75% of them have already been embedded, not just in American government or society, but they have been embedded in the minds of Americans as being normal. There is nothing normal about a free nation that controls every dollar you have, everything that you say online, everywhere that you go, and everything that you purchase. That time is coming. We can talk about everybody keeps talking about, well, CBDCs will never happen. Okay, well, they've already implemented FedNow. So right now, as we speak, all of your bank accounts are fully accessible to all the intelligence agencies, and it's only a matter of time until they spread that tyranny to another place. They always start small. You give them an inch, and eventually they take a mile. So we are moving closer to that. And again, I believe that CBDC is not a term that they will use. They will not say this is a CBDC or a digital dollar. They'll say this is a US stablecoin backed by the US, and it'll be fully programmable. So we already live in this tyrannical society. And there's really no way around that. You can't say that this is not a free nation as we stand right now, considering the fact that right now I'm using my First Amendment right of free speech and freedom of religion to speak about Jesus and speak about God. And I am sitting here in fear that my video will be torn down from this tyrannical platform. So that is not a free world. And I'm also sitting here considering whether or not I want to go into some videos that I'm going to do next week because they already have control of my bank accounts, which is why I use Bitcoin. Because they cannot touch that, especially in the way that I have stored it. So one thing to think about. So as we move into this time, it's important to understand that let's look at the game theory. If Trump wins, which he's going to, in a reality basis, he's going to win. Yes, Cece, I use cash as often as humanly possible, but right now about 40% of the places that I try to use cash at will only accept a credit card. And I don't really understand why business owners go along with this. I've been a business owner for a very long time. I hate when people use credit cards because I lose 5 to 6% of every dollar that comes in the door because there's a central bank middleman and a credit card company and a processor. They all take a piece of the action, and that's part of tyranny as well. When business owners don't have enough money, they can't employ people, they can't expand, and they cannot move their supply chains down the road. They can't grow. But it is important to always kind of revert back to simplicity in life and think about things. Well, let's think about what's going to happen in this country if Trump wins, which he will, or if Kamala Harris and her team rig the election and they win. And I think the best way to think of this is probably the same thing on both sides because the instigators are going to just wear different uniforms. That's the only thing that's going to happen. Either way, at the end of this election, I can see riots happening all throughout this country. There's just no way around that. But we all know the dark side of this, right? There's 20 million people in this country. Many of them are military-age men, fighting-age men. There are many rumors going around that I hear, and I haven't seen them firsthand, so I'll call them rumors, of training camps that exist in very rural areas. Has been going around for 3 years right now. I have seen video, but again, I didn't take the video, and that could be a video of absolutely everything. We live in times where the term "if true" is the most important thing to put in front of everything. But I don't doubt it. I have no hesitation in saying that something like that is happening in preparation. But that's here, right? So we know whoever wins, there's going to be riots. It's going to be the same people wearing different uniforms. On the flip side of that, that's just domestically. Now, if Trump wins and they can't rig it, and the term "too big to rig" is out there often, but from a former technology person and somebody who's watched the brainwashing of America, I don't know if there is something as known as too big to rig. So we'll see what happens there domestically. However, on the other side of things, we have mounting wars everywhere. I really believe that if what's happening in the UK continues for the next 4 months, you are going to see complete chaos in England and Ireland. Ireland is completely overrun. There is no way in the world you can tell me that Ireland is a free nation anymore. It's just watch the videos or call anybody you know who lives there, who is from there, who has relatives there. It is a disaster. There are actually soldiers out in the rural areas checking on little old ladies walking down the street. I saw a video of this the other day. I couldn't determine their accent. It either sounded Albanian or it sounded like Armenian in a certain way. Big, strong, military-looking guys. There's something brewing around the world. I don't know what it is. I don't want to speculate on it. But what I can say is that at the end of this election, we will see chaos, and the only thing that will prevail from there is cooler heads. So between now and then, and between now and eternity, cooler heads will always prevail, and it's something we should always focus on in our life, which is why prayer, meditation, fasting, these things are very important to balance yourself out. But I wanted to stay a little bit focused on the 3 things that I've always said we could do as a nation to halt the tyranny and maybe get to the negotiating with people to make it a little bit more democratic, if you will. There's 3 things. Number 1, we live on a tax farm and we are the slaves. Every dollar we make, they take 40% of every dollar I make. So with 40% of every dollar that I make already out the window, if I cut off that revenue line, they're going to be in big trouble. We have to think a little bit militant when it comes to this. I was talking about this in 2022, that a work revolt or a nationwide strike for 7 days, cutting off all tax revenues throughout the nation, really puts a strain on things and halts a lot of the chaos and tyranny. I don't know that that'll ever happen. I'm not calling anyone to do this either. I'm just looking at it as a game theorist. It's a simple guy in a t-shirt in his guest bedroom talking to people on YouTube Live. That idea is sound. The next one is taxes. Again, YouTube, not calling for a tax revolt, though I wouldn't be against it if someone did. Because when you cut off the tax revenues to this nation, you cut off the ability of corrupt politicians to pay back the credit card that they borrowed against from the Federal Reserve, who always collects from us. What a wonderful life that is to live, where you have an unlimited credit card that somebody else pays back and you never pay any penalties for it. The third one, which is very obvious, is to get our money out of the system. The banking system right now is teetering. Every time they quote unquote print money, which they actually don't print money anymore, it's a very outdated tactic. Every time they push a button and make money appear on a screen, they don't even have to spend money on ink or paper anymore. They print about 10% of all the money. So when they say, we're going to print $1 billion tomorrow, which is probably what's going to happen tomorrow. When they do that, they're only actually physically printing about $100 million. The other $900 million is just a digit on a screen that gets transferred throughout the world in less than 2 minutes. So that's certainly something to do. It's why I've always talked about gold, silver, Bitcoin, raw land, and oil and gas investments. This is out of the system. Especially gold and silver is part of the system. I will state that a majority of the gold and silver that exists in the world, about 80%, is actually held by central banks, and institutions. So from an ownership perspective, it is centralized. The difficulty with it is it's very hard to liquidate. It's very hard to get into cash. You have to find a local bonded gold and silver broker to go sell it to him or sell it to your neighbor who might have an assay testing center there. Bitcoin is a fantastic solution because there's not a single person in the world who's been able to intelligently articulate to me how it is not the most decentralized technology that we've ever known, which is why it's so little understood, which is why we're going to do a Bitcoin session next week, because I want it to be really raw and really incorporate questions and answers, because that is such a good thing right now to be able to have, is open dialogue. And all I've ever heard about Bitcoin ever is that the founder is the CIA and all this other stuff and like scare you away from it. Well, I'm sorry. I just, having studied the CIA for years and years, I find it almost impossible, number one, that they would make anything that would leak to the public. If they were making a vehicle, there are rumors, it's just rumors, but I've heard that there is something that they created called dark coin. I don't know if that's real or not. I've heard it from 20 different people, that they use on the dark web to be able to buy blackmail on each other. I have heard that from multiple people. I have no proof if that's true. However, when you have a system that's run by 2.5 million node holders, so 2 million node holders, thousands of developers, and millions of mining units around the world, it's almost impossible to centralize. So gold, silver, Bitcoin, these are great ways to get your money out of the system. It'll actually appreciate faster than the system, because the system is really designed for us to fail and for them to succeed. So that's where I want to go with that. Just some ideas to put in your mind here on a Saturday. I've got about a half an hour here, so I'm going to speed through. Hey, Savo, what's up, buddy? And Carol, how are you? I want to say hi to y'all. I don't want to make these things too formal, especially on a Saturday. Next week, we'll have a few formal lives that I think you'll enjoy. But RFK, let's get into RFK. RFK, hey, Storm Chaser. RFK is such an interesting story, because we all know the facts, right? His father, his uncle were killed by the CIA. I think Trump has even stated that publicly now. It definitely was the CIA. They've controlled this nation and all nations literally since their inception, even before their inception when they went by a different name. But I think the interesting thing here is, yes, I think he would be, where do you buy crypto? Then pull it off the exchange. You can buy crypto anywhere. I had crypto, before I get into this, for CC. There's a big difference between crypto and Bitcoin, and that's why they're separated. That's why there is Bitcoin, and then there are altcoins. Alt means not Bitcoin. And these all have CEOs, they have presidents, they have shareholders, they have investors. They have a million different ways that they could easily not be what they claim to be, and many aren't. Just my opinion, and my opinion's pretty solid in 2.5 years of watching and researching, and many will hate me for saying that. Many will hate me for saying the truth for anything that I say, so it doesn't really matter to me. Hey, Dustin, how are you? Carol Ann, hey, how are you? Good to see all you guys on a Saturday. But crypto, or I choose to do Bitcoin only. I've sold all my crypto months ago. One of them I had a wallet on Uphold. I dumped that 2 weeks ago. So I have I forgot I even had that. I use Unchained Capital. That's who I use. It's a little expensive. It's a little higher dollar amount. If you're starting out, I would use river.com or I would use strike.me. I've had a chance to meet with Jack Mallers. He's a tremendous young man, very smart guy, and Strike actually has the most money transmitter licenses in the world right now for crypto. So a lot of good stuff happening there. But staying on track, you guys are handling this in the chat, so I'll let you guys handle the crypto conversation. I choose River for beginners in Bitcoin because they have really good customer service. It can be really tricky if you miss one letter or number or capitalization on your code to be able to transfer to a cold wallet. That could go to a different wallet. River will get on the phone with you. Unchained Capital, I've used both of them. I use Unchained for everything now. They will get on the phone with you immediately. And I'm a premier client of theirs now, and I have a lot of extra benefits for that. So really good companies out there focused on Bitcoin, custody, multi-sig storage, which is kind of the highest security you can get for your Bitcoin, and I'd advise them very much so. But RFK. With RFK right now, it is an interesting story out there because here's this guy who obviously has a chip on his shoulder for the CIA. There are many strikes against him. Like let me not avoid that. He is a greenie in his history, right? Many people believed, even 10 years ago, people said, "What do you think about climate change, Eric?" Before I was really totally wide awake, I said, "Well, climate's change. That's what they do. Like, why are we worried about this? Nobody can fix it. If it's changing, it's changing. Shutting off your combustion engine isn't going to stop that." And it's just an illogical approach to think that a government who takes all of your money every month and then uses it for their own nefarious purposes will all of a sudden start doing the right thing and fix the weather. Sounds a lot like the Aztecs who sacrificed people to bring rain. However, I digress. RFK, greenie, pro-abortionist, married to a Hollywood star who was in Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, who's, first of all, I used to love Curb Your Enthusiasm. It was actually great humor. I loved Seinfeld too. I won't watch any of these shows anymore because there are nothing more than activists that are using their content to brainwash society into thinking that they're good people. This is nothing new. We're going to get into that in just a few minutes. I can't wait to get into a stimulating conversation about our way to rethink World War II and why we're in this situation right now. However, RFK, plenty of strikes against him, but they're bringing up everything, right? We've heard about the worm in his brain, the bear in Central Park. I mean, these are just young. I mean, if all the things from our youth came out into the public, we'd all be done, right? As politicians, especially me. Today, they came out and said, well, some guy who I haven't looked into his family, but many people on our channel have, and just said, no way you could trust this guy. But now all of a sudden he was a cocaine dealer in college and all this. They're just going to try to, it's all they do. The left just tries, the left are communists and they are Zionists. And if you support Zionism in any way, you don't understand Zionism. If you think it's about Israel and you think Israel is who God is talking about in the Bible, he's talking about Abraham. Read the Bible. And the apostles were very clear on their thoughts on who lives in Israel now too. So we're going to do that episode. It's definitely going to get me kicked off of YouTube next week. And it is not going to be an angry one and not designed for hate. It's just designed for clarity of actual scripture. But they will always try to burn things down. The left, the communists and Zionists in this nation, socialists, whatever ist you want to give them, they burn things down. They do not know how to build things up. That's more apparent than anything. So instead of building up their candidate, they will always tear down the other one. So expect to hear more drama coming out of RFK's life, despite the fact that his actions, his fruit, are actually incredible. You know, the things he talks about when it comes to personal health care, when it comes to children, that's exactly who I want in office. You know, it could just be words, right? Like, I understand that. I don't trust anyone. Let me state that clearly. I don't trust any politician. Zero. You shouldn't either. The fact that we fall into so much idolatry. I talked about this with my father last night and with a friend of ours that's over here. They were talking about the NFL season, and I said, all we do is create idols. We just create idols out of every possible scenario. Idols out of, listen to what he said. He's the greatest person ever. The only idol you should worship in this world is Jesus Christ. The only God that exists is the one true God directly above you, and he absolutely loves you, and he created everything in this world. Everything else is not to be idolized, including your favorite athletes, your favorite politicians. However, RFK has been very, very outspoken about vaccines, about health, about food. I think the food problem in this country is astronomical. I get asked, I started asking younger people around the Dallas area, like, what topics would you like me to cover in the next year on my lives and on my videos? And like half of them have to do with health. Is red 40 bad for you? Yes, the answer is yes. Red 40 is a cancer-causing agent, and it's in every candy and every drink, and anything that's red has red 40 in it, and it is allowed to be in there. So RFK by himself, I think, is a complete win for everyone. I've had a chance to meet the people that run his campaign. They're not, hardened conservatives that, God, the Bible, and all these other things, which is a good thing. I think all areas of people are good. But the people in his campaign just want to be free. He's very much more of a libertarian than he is a Democrat, despite his past. And libertarians, if they could describe what they actually were, would be a tremendous party. But they're a party of a lot of people who don't know how to articulate what a libertarian is. If I could articulate a libertarian, it would be basically an independent. There is no other party. We need to get rid of both parties and go to all independent candidates, because political parties create political corruption, which ultimately creates political dissent and exactly the environment we live in now. But RFK, the stuff about health, the vaccines is fantastic. More importantly, this guy's been involved in backroom dealings his entire life since the moment he was born. From his father, from his uncle, from his relatives, he truly understands the inner workings of power, not just government. Government actually isn't powerful. Government is the strong arm of power. The power that exists out there will never take a government position because they don't want you to know who they are. He knows who these people are intimately. And I think from a financial perspective, which nobody gives RFK credit for, if you haven't listened to his Bitcoin speech at Bitcoin Conference 2024, you certainly need to. This guy understands not only the solution, but the problem. And you will never understand crypto at all until you truly understand the history of money and its uses throughout history. So I think that we also have this opportunity with RFK to unify people for the first time. Two lifelong Democrats. Let's not forget that Donald Trump was a lifelong Democrat until he ran for president. Now you have two really large names throughout the entire history of politics that are on the same team, kind of. I will be clear on this. RFK is not ending his campaign. He's suspending it in the 10 battleground states to allow Trump to get those votes. But he is going to continue to run in the other states, which is kind of dumb. But I see what he's doing. He's trying to fulfill on the promises from the donations that he was given. Another problem in this world is so much money going into politics. It is ridiculous. While we are sitting here, I've just gotten 3 text messages in the last hour asking me for $7, $10, and $25 to support Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Not that I'm against that, but why do we have to fund these things? These are people who are auditioning for a government job. Shouldn't the government be funding their campaigns equally so that there is no backdoor dealings, there are no union payoffs, there are no purchases of handshake ballots? This is a really big problem, and it all stems from a central bank that prints money for free and gives it away to their buddies so that they're always more powerful, and the people who are powerful are always in bed and right next to the money printer who will always support and defend them. These are really big things. Yes, I forgot who saw this on here, but yes, you're correct. RFK has many, many positive salvo, and he also does understand Ukraine. Ukraine and Israel are kind of the same type of propped up false states. And if you think that's not biblical, wait till next week. I will prove to you that the Israel that exists today is not the Israel of the Bible. The Israel of the Bible is the church. And the church consists of Jews and Gentiles. And to be honest with you, there's a gigantic difference between the two. And we'll talk about that next week. But when it comes to RFK, I think that we're watching a transition from multiple parties into one. And I got a chance to watch about half of RFK's speech because I had so many people at the house last night. But man, if he didn't sound like an injured frog when he talked, I don't mean that to be mean. I feel bad for him with the things going on in his voice. But it's difficult to listen at times. And to be honest with you, everything he says is so spot on. I don't disagree with anything he's really said in the last 2 years. Things he said 20 years ago, I fully disagree with. But I also understand 20 years ago, I would have disagreed with what I said 20 years ago because I saw the world completely differently. And I understand that hearts change, that minds evolve, that people change, and that the environment they live in allows them to grow into a right area. And that's so important for the time we live in right now, because the environment is being manipulated as such to be able to funnel good people into good thinking, where for the last, 50 years, it's been designed with these off-ramps for people to leave good people and good thinking and go into bad ideas with bad people. So you're watching society push people in this direction. It's no different for the wealthy, for the powerful. They're going through the same transition. So I think that throughout time, we're going to see that RFK is just an incredible asset. I don't know if he's the right, person. I'm not saying he's a savior, but I think he's a tremendous asset to Trump to be able to get more votes, which is clear. I don't know if voting will get us out of this, guys. I'll be honest with that, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to vote. I don't know if it'll count for anything, but man, if we don't try, we're just done anyway. So we're going to have to do that. I think along with that, I don't know if I'm going to officially, I won't talk about that on air because they listen to all these things, but taxes, labor, and your centralization of your money are very important to the future of humanity. Do with them as you please. However, I think that there is something on here that really shocked me yesterday was Trump creating a panel about presidential assassinations. Now he has street credibility to do that because there was an attempt on his life and a second attempt that they're trying to find another sex offender who hates him. And again, why do sex offenders and child abusers and child traffickers really hate Trump that much? Can't wait to see when he fixes the border and they go to the other place that's opposite of heaven, because that's where they belong. But I think we're starting to see two main focuses from RFK, and a third will come into play within the next week or two, in my opinion. Right now, RFK is heavily focused on health. That is something that this nation needs. I saw a picture. Somebody put a picture online of the fattest person in the world in like the year 1900, who he was fat. He was a very large man, and people would pay money to see him because he was so fat. This guy wouldn't even be like a 4 out of 10 today in obesity. He wouldn't even be close. You wouldn't even consider him really all that big. And now we have, TV shows glorifying my 700-pound life and all these things. Really unhealthy food, processed food we all know is bad, but it's bad because of the chemicals they put in it. Most of the things that are considered real food, I've been on a steak and eggs diet for 3 weeks now. I've never felt better in my life, and I was told I should never eat those things ever. I also am a nicotine user. I don't smoke, but I use Zyn, and I've never felt better having given up tobacco years and years ago for Zyn. So I do the 3 things they tell you never to do: steak, eggs, and nicotine. I've never been in better shape. I've been losing weight, getting stronger, getting leaner. I feel better. I feel like I'm more patient with other people. But that's such an important topic that RFK brings up. Sidebar is getting to the truth behind JFK. And if you've done any time researching the JFK assassination, you'll know it wasn't one guy. You'll know we haven't been told the truth, and they absolutely know who did it. It wasn't Trafficante. It wasn't a mafia boss in New Orleans. It was absolutely our intelligence agencies, because he threatened to shut them down. And who was in charge of the CIA when JFK was shot? His family has a toll road right down the street from me. So that's a kind of the sidebar, but I think that the main focus that's important is the fact that RFK is bringing the children into the spotlight. The children. Every year this world has 800 to 1 million children that go missing, never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. 1 million people. There are 300,000 children that are missing from our southern border right now. The Democrats have not talked about this at all. They originally said it was like 80,000. It's 300,000 they cannot find. And I would bet that number is still only half counted. These are absolutely the worst people in the world. And I think that RFK has spent enough time and enough private meetings with them that he is going to drop some major truth bombs upon the world. So like him, don't like him, listen to the rhetoric or follow your own path. These things are all up to you. I think RFK is going to be an absolute truth bomb upon the world from conversations he's had specifically with the people who try to play off as being the greatest human beings on planet Earth. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. This is not going to be my best live. I'm not preparing. I don't have a show sheet in front of me to go through ideas, just kind of free-for-alling with you guys here on a Saturday. You're asking me what Zyn is. Zyn is just a nicotine and mint pouch. It's just nicotine and mint, no tobacco. In full transparency, I was a smoker for many, many years. I woke up one day, didn't want to smoke anymore. I still have a pack of Marlboro Lights in my My dresser drawer I've had for at least 9 years now, unopened. So just gave it up. But I was a baseball player, and I dipped for a very large chewed tobacco for many, many, many years. And this was the only thing that actually kept me from buying tobacco again. So that's what Zyn is. It's just a nicotine packet. It's kind of like a nicotine pouch, but it tastes good. You just put it in your lip. Many people are doing it now. I was actually buying this 6 years ago when nobody knew what it was because I wanted to quit chewing tobacco at the time. Oh, there you go, Cece. Cece's got it. So RFK, I think is going to be nothing more than a gigantic truth bomb at some point. I have no idea when that'll be, but he's already dropped some real bombs. If you watched his actual press conference when he was suspending his campaign, he was going hard on who's at fault for things, and that's only going to get better now that he has kind of the shielding and protection of MAGA. By the way, MAGA, don't care what anyone says. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat for sure. I'm certainly not a libertarian or Democrat. I'm a conservative American Christian who believes in this nation, America first, and MAGA. And now we're going to get into this section of this live that I think is going to be most interesting for you because it's a perspective that many people don't have. And I can hear this all the time by the terminology we use for certain things. So if y'all don't mind, in the comments, just let me know you guys cool with this. I don't have a whole lot of daily information for you right now. Nothing news breaking that you probably don't already know. But I've wanted to do this episode as in a 20 or 30 minute format for probably about a year and a half now. And I think the time is really appropriate to do that. So I'm very much MAGA, very much America first, not a Republican. I cannot support the Republican Party, considering they've done nothing to stop what's happening in this country. When they are wiped out and made clean, and we can bring new people in who actually follow their constituents' desires and demands, then yeah, I will probably be a Republican at that point. So let's get into a topic I really want to cover here, and I'm going to take my Zyn out since I've already told you I have one. There we go. World War II. The whole world changed. The world really started to change in World War I. The world really took a turn for the worse in World War II. Since World War II, the belief in God, Christianity, faith has diminished tremendously. Tremendously. When you drop nuclear weapons upon nations in innocent areas, there was no military bases in Hiroshima or Nagasaki. There was no military base there. They did it to prove a point and to say, we have nukes, don't mess with us. Who was doing these things is important. So let's go through World War II. World War I is a completely different story with the same undertone and the same leadership and the same people involved. But I have no notes. So what I'm trying to do for you here, just to take the burden off of me for YouTube censorship, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to summarize 2 documentaries that have a combined watch time of about 23 hours. I have been researching this stuff since I was 16 years old. I grew up in a very interesting world. I had two grandparents, two sets of grandparents like everyone else. There's a much deeper, darker story to both sides that I won't get into. It's my life, not yours. But I did have one grandfather who served in World War II. He was a middleweight Golden Gloves boxing champion in the Navy, served in the South Pacific during World War II. I had another grandfather who didn't serve anywhere. And I would hear, and my grandfather who didn't serve, he would always tell me that it was the greatest war ever fought. Our soldiers are the best. We should have done this. And then I'd go to the other grandparents' house, and I would hear from the grandfather who served in the war that he said, I wish we never fought that damn war. And as a kid, that really confused me because I couldn't really put together. I really couldn't put together how there could be such a big difference between these two people. Now, my grandfather on my mother's side who served, he was proud of his service. He's proud of his nation, proud of his country. And he was a first generation. So his father came over from Greece, and part of him serving in the military was paying back this amazing country for what they had done for our family. And in my eyes, he was a good man. After he died, I realized there was a lot of things he did in his life I very much disagree with. But again, that's my story. But I always was confused about World War II. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? I don't know. So I remember back, it's probably 2009 when Google Alerts came out. 2009, what was I doing back then? I was running a business. Google had just put out Google Alerts. You could put anything. So I put Google Alerts on World War II. And I didn't, you'd see him every day. There'd always be some article that came out about World War II. And I remember seeing an article that popped up, and I wish I still had the email and the screenshot. I didn't think it would be as bad as it has become today. But I remember getting a Google alert about war crimes in World War II, saying that Germany had been absolved of something like 80% of its war crimes. So I clicked on the link. I went and read this article. I don't remember where it is. It's from 2009. And it was mind-blowing to me that all of a sudden these war crimes from World War II were actually attributed to the Russians. So back then I had no idea that things got censored, right? Like in 2009, and I'm sure that there's plenty of people on the internet be, oh man, he's so dumb. You didn't know either in 2009. You thought the world was a great place, just like we all did. 2009, I thought, what in the hell is going on here? How could that be? And about a month later, I was talking to a friend. I go, you're not going to believe this. Check this out. I went to that email. I clicked on the link, and that article was completely gone. The website was completely gone. The committee that did this had completely been evaporated from the internet. And I didn't think twice about it, to be frank with you. So years went by, and I thought about this all the time. So I started reading some other books, some alternative books about World War II. Like, is there another side to the story? And at this point in time, after realizing that we didn't go to the moon in 1969, we may have been there since then. I doubt it, but maybe. We didn't go to the moon in 1969. Even Stanley Kubrick said in his last will and testament that he filmed the moon landing. After all these stories throughout history, you start to think back and you're like, well, maybe everything is propaganda, right? And you kind of go through that. And I'm not saying it is, by the way. There's plenty of evidence in history behind this. But I will say in 2018, as I started getting into my, deeper, I guess, tailspin into actual reality, I started to look back and I started looking at I heard a lot of people online talking about General Patton. And a funny thing, people saying, well, General Patton's just Donald Trump, because they do look alike. Like, they absolutely look alike. I have no idea if that's the case, but they look alike. So I started looking into General Patton quotes. And I'm going to pull it up if I can find it in time without ruining our flow here, so that I don't mix and match his words. But I won't. I have way too many pictures on here to dig through. But General Patton said something very interesting a week before he died. And he said, "Gentlemen, I fear that we have gone across all ends of the world and we have fought the wrong enemy. We should have teamed up with the fascists to beat the communists." And man, did that just remind me of my grandfather. It kind of shocked me. It really spun my head around. So then I got into thinking, like, maybe what was he talking about, right? What was General Patton talking about? So what I'm going to do is give you a quick synopsis of two documentaries. I'll state them out here right now. One of them is us.europathelastbattle.net, europathelastbattle.net, and it'll have a US in front of it. The other one, you're going to have to go to bitshoot.com. It's the only website in the world that carries another documentary called The Greatest Documentary Never Told, or The Greatest Story Never Told. Now, I have watched both of these over the course of the years. I've rewatched a few segments on a few of them just to make sure that I'm not crazy, that someone actually said this. And I'm not going to take any credit for this research. All I've done is read a few books and watch a few documentaries. There is a tremendous, Mike King, also a great book, The Bad War, very eye-opening. There's about 24 books out there about this. So here is kind of the synopsis. And I'm going to give this to you very simply. This is the way I always start out this conversation. I've had this conversation 50 times in the last month preparing to do this online so that I can do it in a way in which I'm not taking anyone else's credit. And I'm also not saying anything that isn't true. And I'm also not going to get into the Jewish topic because that is something I need to explain biblically in order for it to make sense and not sound anti-Semitic and get kicked off of everything, though I don't care if you do because I'm actually a son of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac, making me a Semite. So, in the reality of biblical teaching. So in reality, every war that's fought in all the history of the world is measured in one way. The winner of a war is always measured by who gains more land, who gains land, period. Let me ask you a question. Who gained land at the end of World War II? Who won World War II? The standard answer I get from Americans is, we did. The standard answer I get from someone from England is, we did. Standard answer that I get from someone from France is, we did. Cool. How much land did you gain? We didn't. Yeah, you didn't gain any. The only countries that gained any land at the end of World War II were Bolshevik Russia, and Israel was created. Those are the only two areas that gained land. Russia gained all of Poland, half of Russia, Estonia, Romania, all the way through Ukraine. They expanded a communist kingdom by a massive amount of land. A massive amount of land. Now, the Bolsheviks in Russia took over in 1917. The reality of Bolshevik Russia is that there were 13 leaders. When the Bolsheviks took over Russia, it was no different than the time frame we live in right now. They contorted normal thinking. They created hedonism. They started bashing Christians because Christians will stand for what is right, and they have belief, and they have morals. And what the Bolsheviks did ultimately when they took power is they rounded up every intelligent person, every person who followed them. They're called useful idiots. They support the campaign to shut everything that's good down, and then they slaughtered the useful idiots first. They took everyone of intelligence, of faith, of dissent, and they put them in concentration camps. That was in Russia. That's where that term came from, was from the Bolsheviks. They killed 35 million Christians. Do you hear about that in any of your history books ever? Because I have never seen that. I've seen a mention of that they killed a bunch of Russians, but they never call them Christians. So they killed a bunch of Christians. They took over a nation. And then they had about a 25 to 30 year run of pretty much obscurity and silence throughout the world. No one said anything. You know, this is happening in China right now. There are 550,000 Christians that have to go to underground churches, and you don't hear about the Christians that get killed in China. All you hear about is the Uyghurs who get slaughtered in China because they're Muslim. And you should always feel sorry for everybody who isn't Christian, because Christians probably deserve to die in the mind of those who run the world, because we are not of this world. We just want to make this world better before God calls us home. So the only winners to gain ground were Bolshevik Russia and Israel. I'll get into Israel last. We're saving Israel for last. So through this historical process, it's kind of fascinating to watch, because World War II started in the exact same way that World War III is starting today. At the end of World War I, after the Treaty of Versailles, the Germans were pretty much neutered completely through the Treaty of Versailles. All their money was confiscated. A central bank was implanted in Germany. Their money was hyperinflating before that even happened. Their military was disarmed. Their people were disarmed. There were no guns in this nation. They were completely neutered. Throughout time, they embedded a central bank run by the Rothschild family, who is of Jewish descent. And they started putting other of his cronies, similar cronies, in every position of power all throughout Germany. So every German media nation, of course, the Balfour Declaration was done then. I'm not going to get into that part of this. Let me make this clear. I'm not trying to educate you on this. I'm trying to give you a summary of these documentaries, and I would love for you to watch them and come to your own conclusion, because about 70% of what's in those documentaries is historically accurate. The other 30% I can't verify. So I'm not going to vouch for them, but I'd love to have open dialogue. So again, after the Treaty of Versailles, I'm just focusing on World War II. After the Treaty of Versailles, you have a neutered nation that's totally disarmed. Then you have Rothschild embedding all of his friends as lackeys into all the media, the court systems, the banks. A central bank was embedded. Communism was running rampant throughout Germany, and that brought on the Weimar era of Germany. Now, Weimar Germany can be described in many different ways. By the way, it's not taught in any high school, middle school, and very few universities throughout this nation. It's one of the most important eras in history, and it's happening again here in America right now. We live in Weimar America. So Weimar Germany was very well known for bordellos. It was very well known for whorehouses, for prostitutes, for mother-daughter prostitutes. That was a perversion people wanted. They wanted to sleep with a mother and a daughter. They didn't have any money. The money was hyperinflating. When people got paid in Deutschmarks, they were actually getting wheelbarrows for payments for their work and running to a store hoping they could buy bread before the price of bread went up again. Price did not fluctuate. It just consistently went up over time. So Weimar Germany, well known historically. You can research Weimar Germany everywhere. They actually aren't hiding that a whole lot. because it was very well known for pedophilia. Pedophilia was a very common thing. You can look at old German, Weimar Germany, pre-Hitler Germany, photos of politicians that are cross-dressing. So they had trannies. This is the first era in history where they started cutting off private parts and making transgenders. Weimar Germany was a hedonistic nightmare. And it's unimaginable to think that this happened again. And the only reason that this happened again is because no one talks about these topics throughout the world historically. So Weimar Germany, defined quite simply by the ultimate era of perversion in a nation that you will ever find. Eventually, the German people got so fed up with it that it was not Hitler burning books. It was the German youth in their schools that were burning pornography books that were in their children's libraries. Does that sound familiar to you? Does that sound like an era that we live in now? By the way, at this time, there was no Nazi party. There was no Nazi party. These were communists, Zionists, very well-known Zionists that created Weimar Germany. Weimar Germany was an era of decadence, an era where the wealthy could do as they pleased, do as they wanted, anywhere they wanted to, and step on the feet, and the face, and the toes of the little man, and essentially have full reign over the country. So this era of hedonism throughout Germany kind of brought to light nationalists. Does this sound familiar as well? And then a young nationalist, and I'm not glorifying him in any way, shape, or form, named Adolf Hitler, came into power, and he started talking about eliminating these people who had created Weimar Germany, who had created hedonism. So if you wonder why the media calls Donald Trump Hitler, this is probably a good place to start, because the people of Germany gave Hitler a slogan, and that slogan was, "Make Germany great again." That's historically accurate. And then Hitler created his own slogan during his campaign called Germany First. So when he came out with "Make America Great Again, America First," immediately the media hopped on Trump and started calling him Hitler. So I won't get too much into the long tail effects, but over the next 3 years, he won his election in a landslide. And historians will say that he rigged his election and they used brute force to get people to vote. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not saying it is. I kind of highly doubt it, considering the youth were burning books and not him. And they continued to burn these pornography books because these are very historically proven to be pornography books, which is why they always say, banning books is bad now. So here's what happened after he got into office. And please watch Europa, The Last Battle with an open mind. I'm not telling you this is 100% true. A lot of it in there is historically true. However, look for a different opinion. After he got into office, 3 years after he took power, big things happened. When he took power, when a nationalist took power of Germany, the first thing that happened was they eliminated the central bank. They got rid of usury. Usury is interest rates. If you think that's a good thing, you're wrong historically. It's actually non-biblical as well. And at that point in time, at this point in time right now, this country is $1.14 trillion in credit card debt at an average interest rate of 24%. So sort of the exact same scenario that they saw in Germany: massive debt, massive inflation, currency being devalued. These things happen all over again. So he did a few things. He kicked out the central bank and he created what was called a Reichmark. So he went from a Deutschmark to a Reichmark. The Reichmark was backed by German labor, because before he took power, the unemployment rate in Germany was around 40 to 48%. So 40 to 48% of the men of Germany did not have a job during Weimar Germany. So then what he did was he created new building initiatives. He put them all to work and he backed his currency by labor, which sounds a lot like proof of work, which is what Bitcoin uses. It's actually using labor, meritocracy. The more you work, the better you work, the more value you have. So he did that. Moreover, what he did was he restocked the military, and there's plenty of books on this. So I'm not trying to coin it into these two documentaries are right, because they're very right, but there's also other documentaries. He did take money from the same Zionist who ran the nation to restock his military. That's pretty historically accurate as well. He did it before he kicked out the bank. It's kind of a smart move. Take the money from the bankers, kick out the bank, eliminate usury, put people to work, and get them back on track. So within 3 years, they went from 48% unemployment to 0% unemployment. Their military was one of the biggest forces in the entire world at that time. There was no central bank, no usury, and their dollar was their Reichmark was backed by labor. This made the nation happy. In fact, during that time, he had a stipend agreement. So he was promoting the growth of German people. And I'm going to be hated on the internet for telling the story. I really don't care because somebody has to tell it in a short version, not 27 hours. But what he was doing essentially was encouraging. By the way, he didn't burn down a synagogue at any point during this time. But what he was doing was he was trying to create an incentive program for the German families to grow and flourish. So he built churches, and ultimately he was giving away 1,000 Reichmark per married couple. So if you got married, you got a loan from the government of 1,000 Reichmark to buy a home. And then for every child you had, you were forgiven 250 Reichmark. So the goal for him in Germany was to rebuild Germany with strong German people, which every nation should be proud of and should do. It's not racist to say that. It's racist to accuse someone of thinking that that's racist. But he wanted his people to grow, his nation to flourish. So his goal was to have everyone own their own home and have 4 children. This is not unusual. This has happened thousands of times throughout history. More importantly, at this time, he had already written, I'll stay away from the buzzwords that'll get me dinged. He'd written a book and he'd talked about, who was in charge and what he wanted to do. And to prove this to you, I'll be happy to post the video. Even Benjamin Netanyahu said that Hitler was trying to expel the Jews and not exterminate the Jews. That is historically correct. The rest of it is actually propaganda. Not that the good things happened there. I'm not saying that also. They certainly were rounded up, along with Germans, people of German descent. But in that first 3 years of Germany, under him, they went from totally broke, totally unemployed, to their own currency, backed by their own labor, no central bank. And now families were allowed a 4-week vacation every year to travel the world and tell the story about how Germany had turned itself around. During that time frame of prosperity, multiple nations around the world were creating propaganda campaigns against him, including our own government with Roosevelt. Now, they have written a communist manifesto about Roosevelt. So most of you who didn't know, Roosevelt actually had a communist manifesto attributed to him. That is true. There were multiple books written in this nation about how every German needed to die before the war started, by the way. This is well before the war started. And then all of a sudden, they started seeing conflict in Poland because at the end of World War I, the Treaty of Versailles took a sliver of Poland, or of Germany, and gave it to Poland. Then what happened is Poland installed a puppet leader. We would call him a World Economic Forum puppet today, but they had their own organizations back then. A corrupt Zionist leader was put in charge of Poland to do as he was told by the globalist powers that be. I'm hoping I'm getting the story flowing right. I'm trying to read some comments. I need to stay focused, I think. So while that's happening, much like what happened in Ukraine, right? Part of Russia was given to Ukraine. And in that sliver of the Donbass region, there's plenty of people of Russian descent. Well, there were plenty of people of German descent in that sliver of Poland, mainly Danzig. And what had happened is this globalist leader, who by at this time the Bolsheviks were moving in on the other front from Poland, they had started slaughtering all the people in that area of now Poland of German descent. And word had gotten back to Hitler, gotten back to the Germans. At this time, he wrote letters to England, France, and Spain telling them, I am going to take back that area of Poland, and I would prefer you stay out of this. I don't want war. I want peace. Multiple letters. So he goes into Danzig, where there have been... Danzig is an interesting story because they say that the Germans went in and killed all these people in Danzig and said they were all Jewish. They were all German, and after 1989... when the Bolsheviks were finally eliminated, when communism was eliminated from the Soviet Union, 1989, all of their classified documents were released, showing that the Bolsheviks had gone all the way to Danzig in Poland, all the way in that area of Poland that used to be Germany, and slaughtered all these people and blamed it on Hitler. That is historically true. There is no lie about that at all. So now you have a very difficult situation at the beginning of World War II, right? You have an area of land that used to be yours that was taken from you, where people of your blood and your heritage were being slaughtered by the dozens, by the hundreds, and now you had to go save them and take it back. This is no different than the 13,000 Russians that were just slaughtered in Ukraine by the Azov battalion, who uses the Nazi swastika on their flag. These are in my opinion, Bolsheviks. Part 2. They're Zionist Bolsheviks. By the way, 13 of the 13 original Bolsheviks that existed in Russia, 6 of them were of Jewish descent. They were Talmudic Jewish. Marx, Trotsky, Stalin, all of them have Jewish backgrounds. They're all Jewish blood. Just because you have Jewish blood doesn't mean you follow God. And I hate anyone who talks any other different way. So World War II, he has this area of Poland that's being slaughtered. His people were being slaughtered, calling back to their countrymen, asking him to free them. Same thing in Austria. And he had sent letters to, most importantly, England. Churchill did not respond. The French leaders did not respond. No one responded. They let him go in and immediately declared war on Germany. Now, the stories can go on and on through World War II. I'm not going to make this too long because you should watch Europa, The Last Battle, and you should watch The Greatest Story Never Told with an open mind, and you should think for yourself. But what is historically accurate is the fact that while this was happening, here's some little known things. I had a conversation with a person from Ukraine, and I said, you do know that Putin has offered peace to Zelensky 3 times already. She said, no, he hasn't. He is just running tanks in there and killing everyone. I said, no. Here it is right here. Here's a video of him offering peace. Here's an article of him offering peace. They're denying it. And changed her mind. Well, during World War II, the Germans had offered a peace offering to the English 24 times. 24 times. All of them were ignored. Churchill's entire cabinet was Zionist. Complete cabinet was Zionist. Roosevelt, complete Zionist cabinet. So really think about World War II, right? So we have this area of Poland. They're killing people of German descent. They're invading to free them. The whole world goes against them and says they're trying to take over the world. Same thing they just did to Russia, saying he wants to conquer all of Europe. He's just trying to keep people from getting slaughtered. That's all that was happening at that juncture in history. That's it. And of course, the German forces were so strong right now that most of the people in the world were terrified of them. So Churchill didn't respond to any peace offering. He didn't respond to the letter that was sent to him saying, I'm taking back this area of Poland. As the war kicks off with no instigation from Germany against any other nation, they did not bomb England, they did not bomb France, but miraculously, all of a sudden, this whole conglomerate, sounds like NATO, joined up forces and started attacking Germany, and were losing horrifically. And this is when people have mentioned the Balfour Accords. That's a very real piece of history, whether you want to believe it or not. And yes, part of the Balfour Accords involved both times in both world wars, the reward to get Palestine and the reward to get Israel were both rewards for getting the U.S. in the world wars. That's an actual historical fact. Now, as the war went on and these peace offerings took place, eventually Germany decided to go into Russia. And this was the most telling point for me. This was the most, I had World War II completely wrong as a kid, and so did everybody else. When Germany, who's a relatively small nation compared to Russia, decided to invade Russia, they ended up getting 18 miles from Moscow, which is, from a military standpoint, is almost an impossibility that could have ever happened. Germany was not a large nation. They were just decimated a couple of decades before in World War I, and all of a sudden, they now have this massive military force that fought through Russia all the way to Moscow. That's what we heard. This demonic, horrible army was just pillaging all of Russia and eventually got to Moscow. And the only reason they didn't get to Moscow and finish the job is because of the cruel winter and the lack of supplies, which is true. However, the German army doubled in size over that time frame. It doubled. The German army doubled in size once it entered Russia. There are plenty of interviews, and these documentaries do such a good job of actually showing you the interviews from Russians and from people in Germany and people in Poland, who you never hear their stories, right? All you hear is the Diary of Anne Frank, which was written in a ballpoint pen in 1950. A ballpoint pen didn't exist until 1951. I know Snopes debunked that, but that's a historical fact that you simply can't avoid. And if you're avoiding it because you want to avoid it. However, throughout World War II, thanks for coming, Savo. Thank you for going live. This is a difficult decision to do this, but it's just something I know, and I want to share everything I know. And as we get closer, it's important to understand that we are Germany in World War II. America currently, the MAGA movement, is as close to that as possible. So again, the Germans at one point start to get into Russia. They go into Russia with small forces, small arms. Back then they didn't have the Blitzkrieg, and all of the airplanes were dedicated to defending their borders against England and France. The rest of their military that went into Russia actually went into Russia to try to shut this down, because at that point there were books and headlines of newspapers saying that this is our last chance to stop the New World Order. The New World Order was in place in 1871 when Albert Pike actually wrote a letter describing the three great world wars that will bring on the New World Order. He was historically accurate in World War I and II, and he's pretty accurate right now. I posted that on my Telegram channel the other day, and you should certainly read it. When someone makes a prophecy in 1871 that comes true 3 different times throughout history, you should pay attention. So as the Germans were going through Russia, the Russian citizens and the renegade soldiers were surrendering to the Germans and wanting to fight against their own government. A government that had killed 35 million Christians and another 30 million Russians that were not of Christian background, but they were intelligent, they were dissenting, they were free thinking. So they installed the Bolsheviks, who slaughtered everyone who wouldn't just be a sheep, a goy, and live on the farm and pay taxes and do what they were told. They killed them all. So the people who remained off in the countryside were actually not even trying to defend their own nation. They laid down arms, they laid down their pitchforks, and they joined the German forces, which is the only way that Germany even got to within 18 miles of Moscow. The Russian military was unbelievable at that time. They went through Poland in a matter of minutes, it seems like, historically. This is a very powerful army. Now, on the flip side, the other Russian military was going around the southern end back into Europe and killing all kinds of people and learned to speak German. I'm not making this stuff up. You should watch, again, Europa, The Last Battle, and you should watch The Greatest Story Never Told. I'm going to repeat this over and over again. These documentaries deserve to be seen, whether you believe them or not, whether you want to believe it, whether you want to think a different way or not. It needs to be talked about and it needs to be shown. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to get too big into this whole thing, but just this amount of information. I've got to go to a football game and watch my daughter cheerlead. What I wanted to do with this today was to stimulate your way of thinking and let you see that maybe even history, the things that you believe you know the most, may not be true, because most of them aren't. Most of them just simply aren't. So I would take the time to watch these, but it's very interesting to note that there are books written, there are videos, there are documentaries, there are interviews with people that talk primarily about the fact that in World War II, we should have teamed up with the fascists to defeat the communists, beginning with General Patton. And historically, you cannot get a more confusing point in history, because right now we have this opinion of what Germany was and what all these people. I'm not trying to defend that. I just want to be able to look at history and know what the truth is. And that's why I think immutable blockchains are so important to record history. If you can record history on something that can never be changed and a lie could never be told, we wouldn't end up in the scenario that we're in right now. We would actually be in a free world with free thinking people that are innovating and creating amazing things that could change the entire trajectory of mankind for the better. Instead, we live in old lies. We tell old lies over and over again. We continue to tell old lies to people, and we never actually seek the truth. It's also a byproduct of the time we live in. People are busier today than they ever have been. Live on a farm. You can live on a farm for 5 days. You'll realize what real busy is, right? When you got to wake up and you got to go the entire day with manual labor. It is a busy time on a farm. Now our farm is these phones and computers and meetings and DEI meetings at work and learning about diversity, and all of your time is consumed, so you don't actually research history to understand what the world is really made of, what it really is. And I can say, and I'm trying to be delicate with this because I don't care if my channel gets ripped down. I'll just create another one. I have one on Rumble. But I don't want to scare people away and make them think that I'm saying, I support this. I'm just telling you point blank, World War II is just as big a lie as the lie that's been told against Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a nationalist. From what I can see, RFK is kind of a nationalist. Muammar Gaddafi was a nationalist. Saddam Hussein was a nationalist. Assad is a nationalist. The list goes on and on. People who repetitively get demonized and get made into the worst people you've ever heard of, Those stories come from the worst people who've ever existed, telling you about people who simply don't want big pharma influence in their nation. They don't want a central bank ruling their money. They don't want outside parties dictating their resources or who controls what. That is the most eye-opening thing. So for me, and that's a small rendition, I will prepare a video. I don't really need to prepare a video. This is a YouTube live. I want you to watch these documentaries on your own. I want you to watch what I've watched. And I want you to watch it with an open heart. I don't want you to blame every person of a specific religion or background for the sins of their forefathers. That's also part of the problem. What I want you to do is watch history and see how it repeats itself in the exact opposite direction that you were taught in school. Even if you spent $250,000 on a college education, yeah, they lied to you. That's why college isn't worth anything. That's the one area of the world that Charlie Kirk has been totally right. The college scam is a scam. They don't teach you about F.A. Hayek or any of the actual economists. They just teach you propaganda, put you in debt, and you're screwed for the rest of your life on this tax farm. So if you want to get off the tax farm, you have to understand the modern times. If you want to understand what's coming with the election, you have to understand history. And history is told by the winner, and the winner has always been the bad guy. That is the fundamental truth. Until you can prove to me otherwise, when you look at here's what AI has done. AI is either the savior of mankind, it'll make life easier, or it's the demise of mankind, and it depends on whose hands control it. Right now, you are watching a battle for supremacy and control of AI moving forward. Eventually, that will be quantum computing. Whoever's in charge will be the winner. That's a final statement, right? There's no argument or conversation about that. Right now, that's what this is all about. The whole world is about who's going to control AI, because AI ultimately is going to dictate humanity. And when you look throughout history, one thing AI has done tremendously well for us, every weapon created against us, God turns into a weapon of the light. The internet was created as a weapon against you. The internet is what is actually freeing humanity, because we have the chance to share videos like this until they take them down. Now, right now, one thing AI that's doing that they probably never intended, here's what I would do if I were you. I would go get speeches from Gaddafi, from Hussein, from Assad, from Hitler, and I would run them through an AI translator. Just do it and see if it's the same thing you've been told, because one of them I just did was right before Germany started bombing England. I wasn't alive in World War II, so I don't know what they were saying on the newspapers or the TV stations or the radio. But I do know that throughout history, it's all the same. And what I do know is the history that I've read about what the media was saying was that Hitler was, it was all about the Aryan race and pure blood, and we must kill Jews. I just told you, Benjamin Netanyahu even said Hitler was trying to expel the Jews, not exterminate them. The Jews were actually in power in Weimar Germany and had run the nation into the ground, and everyone knew it. He actually created a pathway to expel the Jews to Madagascar. However, Churchill bombed Madagascar, so no one could inhabit it. So then he cut a deal to send the Jews to Palestine, who got Palestine after the First World War. He was going to give them a military convoy and all of their assets, but the Middle East didn't want them. They wouldn't take them. They have been kicked out of, some people call them Khazarian, or they're Talmudic Jews, have been kicked out of many nations throughout history, beginning in Spain in the 1400s. That's not this. I have plenty of Jewish friends. I love Jewish people, but I have plenty of Christian friends. I love Christian people. What I hate are evil people who pretend to be either. That's the problem. These are Satanists, Luciferian, Zionists, who pretend to be a religion so that you trust them and believe them as they steal and kill. That is the true history of the world. So even Netanyahu on video, if you don't believe me, dare me. I'll DM it to you. I'll put it on my page. He said the same thing, like word for word what he said. Now, the Muslim leaders told Hitler to burn them. But again, I'm not going to get into the concentration camps and the Holocaust denier movement that's happening right now. It's happening for a reason. It's happening for a reason because it's mathematically impossible for 5 or 6 concentration camps to have killed 6 million people, and no one in the towns that lived there even knew it was happening. Burning bodies can be smelled thousands of miles away. They just can be. And if you watch the interviews from the people who lived in these areas, they're going to tell you the same thing. We had no idea that they were doing that. I had no clue. Yeah, we saw trains coming in and out. England bombed Germany 2 weeks after they surrendered with phosphorus bombs. All those concentration camps had a lot of German refugees who had nowhere to live after England dropped phosphorus bombs on every city in the nation. So they were pretty stockpiled with sick people who had typhoid. That's a fact. I'm not saying I wasn't there, so I'm not going to say it was real or it wasn't. But I also have read all the doctrine of my enemy and of all of the religions. And I can tell you, if you read the Zohar, which is what Kabbalists follow, and if you think Kabbalists are here to create a better world for Christians, you're wrong. But even in the Zohar written by the Kabbalists, it's very clear in there that there cannot be a new Israel until 6 million Jews vanish. So what a great way to use that 6 million to get Israel, because the only two people who gained ground after World War II were the Russians, and then Israel was created. So the world is not what you think it is in any way, shape, or form, and World War II was the largest event in human history, and the propaganda that was created during that time frame still persists today in massive swaths. I mean, it's commonplace. I'm not saying the Nazis were good people. I'm definitely saying the Bolsheviks were horrible, demonic Satanists. And in 1989, that was proven to be true. It's a difficult video to make. There's so much ground to cover, but I think it's important to understand the sliver of land in Poland, all the propaganda against Hitler, that we had people in America. Candace Owens talked about this. She talked about this on her episode a week and a half ago. They were definitely writing books that were titled "Every German Must Die Before the War" in America. In America. And these were people who were in Roosevelt's cabinet. So all throughout human history, nationalist states, nations that focus in on their own people and their own nation, have been attacked since the dawn of time. Media is the number one attack point. That's where it begins. They create a hate campaign. And I will tell you this, that Trump has become the new Emmanuel Goldstein, who is the main character. And I said this in like 2020, or actually 2019, when I really started to see what they were doing to Trump, because I didn't care before that. I had my own life. I didn't really pay attention to politics. Like everyone, I didn't pay attention to politics. So when I hear people say, I don't pay attention to politics, I always say, so did I. And by the way, my life's a lot more fulfilled that I know what's going on these days than I did then. But in the book 1984, written by George Orwell, who's a Zionist, whose real name is actually Eric Blair, who's a member of the Blair family, like Tony Blair, who was the PM of England. He had this book, 1984, that used to be read in schools. Now it's not read in schools. It's a banned book in certain schools, depicting what dystopia would look like in the future. The main one of the characters in there, the main enemy in the movie was, or in the book, was called Emmanuel Goldstein. Emmanuel Goldstein was the bad guy. He believed in free speech, his own nation. He believed that people should be free and be able to speak their minds. They made him the enemy so hard that every day the entire, all the members of Oceania, they had to get together every day for 2 minutes. They would show a picture of Emmanuel Goldstein on a screen, and they would curse him and yell at him and demean him. And that's how they got it out of him. It really does remind me 100% of the liberal people in today's world who get together and have, screaming parties because they hate Trump. This is no different than 1984 and Emmanuel Goldstein. I also find it ironic that the victim, the good guy who's the bad guy, his last name is Goldstein in the movie. However, this whole process, it began a long time ago, a very long time ago. And every time a nationalist says, you know what, I'm going to run for an office, I'm going to focus in on my country, I'm going to make sure my countrymen are that we're really doing well. And once we're doing well, then I'm going to help spread that message throughout the world, and I'll defend other people. Well, that doesn't work in a globalist agenda who wants to install a central bank who controls the money. Then they want to be able to make sure that they can use the media to control the minds. Then they contort the churches to control the souls, and the game is over. America is in its final hour as we speak, and it is amazing to watch in times like this, the collaboration of multiple parties and multiple people with multiple pasts like Elon and RFK and Trump coming together and uniting. I will state this over and over again. I will be unapologetic in saying that I'm glad I made this video. It's probably not the best video I've ever done because it's all over the place, and I'm still kind of talking to myself, even though I can see you guys on the screen. It's much better in conversation. But when you look at the facts of World War II, when 24 offerings of peace go to a nation that doesn't respond to them even, and then that guy gets demonized, those letters of peace involve giving them their colonies back, becoming a military partner of England forever. He just wanted the war to be over. He stated multiple times in actual German documents, the only goal he had in the war was for Germany to be recognized as a nation in Europe. That's it. He never talked about a conquest. He never talked about an extermination. Use AI translator. Listen to the speeches. In fact, before they invaded England, he said, I have extended my love and they have rejected my love. And now it is time that they feel the power of our nation. And having taken at that point in time about 6,000 or 8,000 bombs on their southern border, they were justified in doing what they did militarily. So, you're watching times repeat. I think it's important. I would advise all of you on this weekend or in the next week, the greatest story never told is only on BitChute. It's not allowed on any other website. That's probably for me, that's a pretty good indicator of the truth. I know it'll be called anti-Semitic. I am not anti-Semitic. I talked to a Jewish friend 3 hours ago before this, and he knows where I stand on things. I desire the truth, and I think that understanding history and what comes next comes from history. So we have a nationalist running for our nation. They've already demonized and turned into Goldstein. Like we've already seen that happen in this country. We've watched people get radicalized behind it. The next step is generally to suck us into a war and blame it on him. So I know a lot of people are saying at the end of the election, it'll be chaos. I am too. But I think once he gets into office that they're going to try to start the war then, because they're going to really call him Hitler at that point, especially with using slogans like America First and Make America Great Again. Those are literally directly from the campaigns in Germany. One was actually written by the people. The other one was written by the campaign. So that's about all the time I have for you here on a Saturday. I'm going to open up for a few questions here. There's been a lot of stuff going through here, but it is really hard to condense 23 hours of documentary into a period. And again, if I'm sure people have been sharing it on the chat right now, but EuropaTheLastBattle.net and The Greatest Story Never Told on BitChute. That's a shorter one. It's 6 hours. I think it's a little more slanted in opinion. I think EuropaTheLastBattle.net. I think it's 15 hours total, but it's broken up into segments so you can watch it, a little bit before work or at lunch or afterward. I think those need to be watched by everyone, whether you believe it or not. You have to open up your mind. You have to study the other perspective of everything. You could look at something and say, that's right. Well, I do that all the time, but I also go, that's right. And then I look at the next thing of somebody who totally disagrees with it to make sure that I'm right or to change my mind. The sign of intelligence is the ability to change your mind. It's the ability for you to think freely, to take in information without being emotional, to be able to take in information and weigh it against what you see with your own eyes and ears. This is the basic scientific process of understanding anything, yet alone history, which is mostly a lie. And a lot of people will say, well, I'll give my thoughts on Israel next week because my thoughts on Israel are very simple because they're based on the Bible, not the Schofield Bible, the Schofield Reference Bible, but the actual Bible. We are Israel. The believers of Christ are Israel. Israel is not a physical nation any longer. It has not been since 2 Kings in the year 722 BC, when Israel was conquered by the Assyrians and completely taken as slaves into what is now modern-day Mosul in Iraq, which used to be known as Nineveh. These are very scripturally accurate things. There's really no debate. The only debate you would have is if you were raised deep evangelical on the Schofield Reference Bible, which has created a massive Christian Zionist movement supporting our actual enemy. Our enemy is not the Jewish people. They're also not our friend. Christians by nature, if you have read the Bible at all, you will understand Jesus came to divide the world into two different factions, those who believe in him and those who do not. That's it. Like there's no discussion with that. You either believe in Christ, you either pro-Christ or anti-Christ. Since we live in a world of pro and anti so much, I think that's a very good place to go. We should be supporting. We all think this is the end times and Revelation, things like that. So I will only yoke myself to another Christian at this point. Not to say that I can't be friends with other people, but yoking my life. It's important to be with others who have the same faith that you do. We do not have any friends. Christians do not have any friends. Actually, if you look at the Bible, the Talmud, and the Quran. Only in the Bible and the Quran acknowledge Jesus Christ. He's the Lord and Savior in the Bible, and he's also acknowledged as a prophet in the Quran. In the Talmud, he's actually boiling an excrement in hell. I'm not making this stuff up. It's very much available for you online to read. Not to say that there aren't really good people who don't follow that, who follow the Torah, but even the Torah has, they say it's the first 5 books of the Bible. It's a bit more than that. But I certainly don't want to be the guy to come on. There's plenty of people talking about this stuff. Whether you like them or not, Owen Benjamin has mentioned a lot of these things out there. Jake Shields talked about a lot of these things. Candace Owens has come out and talked about a lot of these things. We live in a world right now that is run by people who don't allow us to talk about them. That tells you all you need to know. It's whoever you can't say anything about. Everything is anti-Semitic. Well, what about the anti-white stuff we see every day, the anti-Christian thing we see every day, the anti-black thing, the anti-Mexican? You see it everywhere, except for one specific group of people you're not allowed to talk about, and that's because the ones who are outwardly are fake, and the ones who believe inwardly are truly good people. That's it. So next week I will do a believer of Christ or Israel. Dustin, you're correct. You're correct. It's in Romans. Israel is the church. The church is where 2 or more are gathered. Many of your churches are Zionist churches that are preaching you a false Christianity. And I'm not sitting here as a preacher or pastor. I'm sitting here as a normal guy who has a lot of historians for friends and a lot of biblical people for friends. And I've spent 2 years researching this because I'm not an expert. And I will next week go through the biblical take on what Israel is and what we should be looking for. John was very clear about this. Ephesians, Thessalonians was absolutely certain about this, and yet half of our country, that's just kind of the way of the modern world in psychological warfare, is half the world actually is taught from the moment they're born to cheer for their master, to cheer for their enslaver. And that's genius. Genius. But it's time we break that spell and start understanding that most of history, most of the evil leaders that we have heard of throughout time. By the way, Mussolini was also a nationalist who did not want to conquer the world. He wanted to team up with someone to end the first New World Order, which was in World War II. And we've all been silenced to question history in any sense since then. And the nuclear weapons really shut up the rest of the world for a while. But I think it's time that we all start taking a different approach in life and really sitting down, loving our families, praising God, evaluating what history is to determine what the future is, and just being a little bit closer together and being accepting of new ideas, as long as they have some proof behind it. I'll listen to anything. I will not listen to conjecture or pure hate on anything, because there's plenty of that. It's easy to go through these things and begin to hate, by the way. It's easy to watch these documentaries and begin to hate. Don't do that. Don't do that. That is not what God intends. That is not what I intend. That is not what anything is intended to be. The mistakes and the sins of the past should not be punished by those. Just like there's no way in the world any American should be paying anybody reparations for slavery. This is ridiculous. Not a single person alive today was a slave. Nobody in my family ever owned a slave. I'm not paying anybody for somebody else's sins in the past. And you shouldn't have to do it in the other direction. You shouldn't be hating people for things that happened in the past. But you certainly should understand history, its course, and where that could take us in the future, because this entire section of history, this story should have exploded in 1989, 1995, somewhere in that time frame when the Bolshevik classified papers were released, and they proved that about 80% of the things they told you Germany did in World War II were actually the Russians, who were the partners of the Americans, who our American President Roosevelt, who came up with the first New Deal, and took your gold in 1933, who was a communist. That part of history should have been revealed in the early 90s, and I still haven't heard anything about it, except for 2 brave souls who made documentaries who can never be put on any website on the centralized internet. So if nothing else, I hope this hour and a half or however long we've been on this live, I'm running a little. My wife already took my daughter to cheerleading. I got to be there in a few minutes. I hope that this live serves a purpose for you. I hope it inspires you to go look at a different perspective of history. And most importantly, I hope it inspires you to be better people, not worse people. We need to be able to, even the people who we think are on the wrong side of things. There was a guy named Saul of Tarsus who slaughtered Christians, who ended up writing most of the New Testament because he found his faith in God. We should be leading these people into a better world and not hating on them because the things of the past or what they believe or what they look like. So until tomorrow or Monday, I got to get some dental work. I don't know if I'll be able to do a live. I might be talking like this. But if I'm not, I'll certainly be on here on Monday. We'll go through some Bitcoin on Monday, and we'll start getting on these things 3 to 5 times a week. I really like doing the live format because I don't have to ship the video back and forth and do all this crazy stuff. So thank you so much for being here on a Saturday for an hour and 40 minutes. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. I look forward to chatting with you again. Until next time, God bless you. God bless this country, and we'll see you again soon.